Here we'll do an example where we're changing US units into metric units. We are told that the length of a football field is 100 yards, and we're asked how many centimeters long is this? Before we begin, let's have a look at what type of units we start with and what type of units we end with. The yard is a US unit, whereas centimeters, or cm, are metric units. We'll need to use a special conversion to get out of US units and into metric units. The reference table I've written on the right will tell us how to get from various US units of length and into metric units of length. Since we're given yards to start with, let's look at this reference table and locate yards. Notice that the third entry in the table does contain yards. And on the other side of that conversion factor is a conversion to meters. This does not match what we want because we want to have centimeters instead. However, the good news about going from US units to metric units is, once you're in any metric unit, you can change to any other metric unit. Therefore, let's write first that we're going to begin with 100 yards. According to the table on the right, we could change from yards to meters, or m. Since meters is a metric unit, we can freely change from that to any other metric unit. Since centimeters is also metric, we can write down that we can go from meters to centimeters. Recall previously that we said 1 meter was about how tall a child might be, and this is the same as 100 centimeters. That's about the width of your thumbnail. Let's begin by writing 100 yards, and then multiplying by a fraction to take us out of yards and into our unit at the end of the first step, that's meters. Then we multiply by a second fraction for our step 2 that will take us out of meters and into centimeters. We'll send these meters to the bottom of the next fraction and write that we want centimeters at the end. Now that we've placed our letters, let's deal with our numbers. Our first fraction has meters on the top. Our conversion factor has a decimal number 0.9144 next to meters. That will go on the top, whereas the 1 yard, since it's on the bottom of that fraction, we'll put on the bottom. We now say 1 yard in 0.9144 meters. This takes care of our first fraction. Now we look at the second. Notice that we have meters on the bottom in our second fraction, so we'll box that in and note that that 1 meter will go to the bottom. Then our 100 centimeters must have the top position. This makes sense because centimeters should be our answer. Say 100 on top and 1 on bottom. Now let's look at our operation. We'll have 100 multiply by 0.9144 multiply by 100. We'll skip over dividing by 1 because the 1s won't change the answer. Now we go to the calculator. We enter 100 times 0.9144 times 100 again. When we press enter, we get 9,144. Now we check our units. Our yards that we started with cancel out with yards on the bottom, and the meters on the top of the first fraction cancel out with the meters on the bottom of the second. This gives us centimeters as our final answer, and so we'll say our final answer for the length of this football field is 9,144 centimeters. Now don't worry too much if you don't remember the US to metric conversions immediately. You won't be called upon to memorize them for the purposes of this class. The only ones they'll want you to memorize are the ones that are metric to metric only. So meters to centimeters and meters to millimeters that we did in the previous videos. You'll need to know those without looking them up. But these US to metric conversions, you can use a reference table for.